Hello, welcome to this evening's meeting of the Finance and Governance of Taunton Town Council's committee. I am temporarily sitting in as chair for the committee since the normal chair and the vice chair are not present at the moment. Hello.
You might want to just carry on reading.
Yeah, okay.
For a minute.
The chair, so I'll carry on. I would like to advise everyone present that should the fire alarm sound, you should leave the building immediately by the fire exit and meet at the signposted fire assembly point, which is in the green just outside the building. You should not return to the building for any reason until you have been advised that it is safe to do so. Can I please remind everyone to put your mobile phones on silent and wait for the duration of the meeting to avoid interference and any iPads with microphones. The meeting is recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Therefore, when speaking, please remember to speak clearly into the microphone as the chair of the meeting. At the discussion to terminate or suspend recording or live streaming if it is the opinion that continuing to do so will prejudice the proceedings of the meeting. Recording or live streaming of confidential items will not take place. Let's carry on from here.
Yeah, we can finish that part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So
It's just the procedural stuff at the bottom.
one not to place. To alert me as the chair of the meeting that would like to speak, please raise your hand. Please remember, if you leave for the meeting for any reason, you will not be able to take part in the vote on the item that is being discussed at the time. Members of the public will be able to view the live stream on the meeting via YouTube. Please can I request that when speaking, you make your points as succinct as possible to allow for the smooth running of the meeting. And also this opportunity to remind you to be polite and treat each other with respect at all times. Thank you. Right then, firstly, apologies for being late. Childcare got stuck in traffic, and then I went to the wrong room. So I went to the church across the road. Cool. So let's move on with the agenda then. So have we, number one, have we got any apologies for absence?
We've got Councillor Tully and Councillor Garside.
Are there any declarations of interest?
I'm a member of VPAG, which is the Victoria Park Action Group, which we are discussing the Friends policy. So just,
I will volunteer for the Friends of Venture.
No. Moving on to agenda item number 3, the minutes from the last meeting. Pretty happy with them? If you are, could I get a proposer? And can I show a vote? Let's see a show of hands for a vote in favour. Everybody. Okay. Number 4, unauthorised encampment policy and amendments.
Thank you, Chair. So, this evening, members are being asked to consider the approval of the amended illegal encampment policy. So just to provide some background information there. So the Town Council implemented a policy which was approved by the Finance and Governance Committee last year. Subsequently, dealing with illegal encampments have been carried out through the engagement with a local enforcement company. The company handled the eviction on behalf of the council following the initial review of the eviction process. A meeting took place with the eviction company, who confirmed that the Town Council could proceed under common law. Now, under these legal grounds, welfare checks are not mandatory for Taunton Town Council as they are for Somerset Council, given their responsibilities in things like housing, education and social care. So the town council are not under the same statutory obligations, and it can enact evictions under common law, permitting the rapid eviction of illegal encampments within 24 hours of their reported arrival. So this adjustment to the eviction approach has been reflected in the updated policy. And while the policy states welfare checks are conducted, any issues identified will be directed to Somerset Council's GIPSI liaison team and involve the local policing team. With regards to any kind of corporate implications, so implementing this policy guarantees the continued prosperity of our community and council that is committed to protecting our assets and our spaces from negative impacts. With regards to climate and ecological implication, this policy, coupled with the enforcement under common law, would actually decrease the duration of illegal camps within our parks and public areas. Consequently, this diminishes the effects encampments have on the local ecology and the environment. So with regards to finance and resource implications, it's not so straightforward in that there's no fixed price because it is determined upon the size of the encampment. So engaging an enforcement firm that specialises in clearing illegal encampments entails certain expenses that vary based on various factors such as the scale and number of units involved. Larger encampments necessitate a greater number of officers, whereas smaller ones require fewer. But not less than 4 officers are typically mandated for any eviction. So I have detailed some small risks here. So there is a risk of legal challenges, but to mitigate that, we consulted with an experienced company who have been in business since 1993. And I guess if the updated policy is not adopted, then there could potentially be some reputational damage. And the policy that we are talking about today provides a clear and transparent way of managing those illegal encampments and provides information to members of the public of the process that the town council will follow. We'd like to implement the updated policy as soon as possible, and I will just repeat the recommendation that I'm asking for members to consider the approval of the amended illegal encampment policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
With this, I'm assuming we can't name the company because that would be confidentiality. But would you be able to send us, within the confidential document, the contract that we have for this company? Just so we can, at some point, privately review it.
We don't have a contract for that particular company. It's normally based on availability of an enforcement company that could evict under the common law practice, which any enforcement company could do for us. So it'll be the process of raising a purchase order and.
So it's a clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Question. So to date, for example, we've had at least 2, haven't we? One for incursions of trespassers onto our land. One was Priorswood Rock and the other was Taunton Green. And so what procedure did we use then? Did we go to court to get possession order? How is it different from what we're, so you're saying this is going to speed it up because we're using a different legal process and that's okay for us to use, and I'm definitely in favour of us using it because the damage to the environment and the inability of people to actually use those public spaces in any way, shape or form is so immense. But I just think, I have huge sympathy with people who don't have safe swapping places, but that's a slightly separate issue. I think we should be lobbying Somerset Council to pull their finger out and set up a safe transit site somewhere. I think we should definitely be making representations about that, but meanwhile, I absolutely support swift action, but just explain to me how can we do it before? And I know a lot of the timing, it does revolve not around just the process. And I know welfare checks and that can slow it down, can't they? But also around, as you said, the availability of the enforcement company. But which process are we using today? Just so I can clear on that.
Yeah. So today, today we are using a common law eviction process. Historically, When the town council was created, quite shortly after, we had our first eviction. So we didn't have the paperwork available, so we defaulted to Somerset Council's policy. So then we adopted the kind of the welfare checks, and then subsequently realised that as a town council, we don't have that statutory obligation to provide housing, social care and education, and then realised, talking to an experienced enforcement company, they were able to say, actually, as a town and parish council, without that, because you're not responsible for those statutory services, we can use something known as common law, and that's what we are working with today. So hopefully that explains the differences.
And is that what other town councils do as well? They don't do welcome checks when you're not coming.
Yeah, common law is the common process, I guess, for town and parish councils to evict.
We also had one in Stony Furlong as well, didn't we? Or was that before the town council?
I don't remember that, so it must be
Yeah, it
before.
must have been just before then.
I mean, presumably there is a sort of case where they might be a small encampment sometime, and the clerk may decide there are, you know, you go have a look-see, wouldn't you? And if there were significant obvious welfare issues that meant that process, you might have to do something a bit different. I'm confident that we would have the nous and the kind of empathy to do that. But I think the issues we've seen today have been simply, what on earth are you doing here with your massive caravans and horses and what have you? But I'm kind of okay with that. So I definitely want to support this. The other thing I wanted to raise was, so we're putting in measures at Private Park to prevent people getting on there in the first place, but Taunton Green, and I forget where we're at on that, maybe that's what brought some assets to think up there, just to be sure. And Frenchwood, I know they've tried, they're coming, you know, the balance, not, there could be a way that they can get onto Frenchwood, so I think we need to sort of risk assess other places and make sure that we've got preventative measures in place.
Thank you. Yeah, just it says that the expenses for these come out of the parks maintenance budget. I presume that means if the encampment's on Victoria Park, it will come out of Victoria Park's maintenance budget. Yeah. It says just generally about the report. I know we've seen this before. It says that when there's a report made that someone's there, someone will be sent to take a look. Like Sarah said, is that going to be an officer, or are there plans that's separate to the new role of the anti-social behaviour? We would be sending them, or it doesn't specify in there. So I just wondered if that was part of their role, particularly to get sent there to check it out.
Initially, they do go there, but we, as officers, have been round before as well.
Right,
To check out the situation, some severity of it.
Yeah. Okay. And just finally, this speeds things up. But does this isn't a criticism, but if this was we were aware on a Friday night, does that allow us to act on Saturday, or do we have to wait until Monday?
So enforcement companies typically operate a 24-hour service. So Able Investigations do operate a 24-hour, 7 days a week service. So they have advised that they would avoid evicting on a Saturday evening or Friday evening, as people tend to drink, and so there's you know the risks increase. But actually, yeah, they operate 24/7. 7 days a week.
Couple of questions. So just out of interest, do you say 2 encampments we've had so far? How much does it cost the council?
So since we've come into existence, I would say roughly you are looking at £7,000.
And then just going back to that point about our parks, have we checked all of the parks, for instance, and assessed all of them to ensure they're, and obviously we tend to check them once an encampment's happened, but have all of them done? And like I mentioned, Stony Furlong does fall into the town council area, and that had a massive issue.
Can I just go back on that question, just to
Yeah, I've got kind of supplementary, kind of ties into that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So is it our responsibility to secure the parks, even where the area that's got to be secured is Somerset Council land?
no, it would be our land we have to secure.
So if access to Victoria Park is made through land that's not ours, it's not our responsibility. I'm not sure if that's the case, if there's a bit off, one of the roads, Cranmere Road, where I think Simon Coles wrote about putting the pillar back in. I don't know, it's just a question, that's all, about where the responsibility lies to secure that. If the security itself is a tricky one.
Yeah.
I just thought it was worth asking, sorry to interrupt.
But in relation to the security of all the other parks, what the operations team was looking at is the measures that go into Priorswood Park, how they work, what the feedback is from them as to what we implement in any of the areas. So it's a bit of an exercise to start with, because, you know, it's what works best.
Sorry, just to be a pain, you've got the issue of Stimmy Film. It's obviously not a park we currently have. It's within the Taunton Town Council area. That obviously has had major incidents there before, some unpleasantness. What then discussion take place to check that off? Because obviously residents would expect that to be move quickly as well. Obviously, if not technically ours, but within our residents will be confused.
Anything within our ownership is what we've got a responsibility to use the powers to evict. We can't evict on somebody else's land.
So presumably that's Somerset Council.
The Somerset Council would be their responsibility.
And then they obviously have to do welfare checks. So as soon as an encounter happens, so would that slow our process down, or have they just got to get in and out as quick as they can to do theirs whilst we're doing our work?
For that particular area, because
For a park that we're responsible for.
they don't have to come in, and if it's a part that we're responsible for, we don't have to go through those checks. Somerset Council don't have to come in. We can evict under the probable process.
I just thought that they were statutorily obliged to.
We're not statutorily obliged because it's our land.
Yeah, okay, so it's basically effectively down to land.
owner.
Any other questions? Okay, so let me just. So, members, to consider and approve the approval of the amended illegal encampment policy. So can I have a proposal for this? Second, can I have a show of hands for all votes in favour? So that's unanimous and that is passed. 5. Members to consider the approval of the Friends of policy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So we as a town council currently oversee 4 Friends of groups. In the following parts, we've got Friends of groups in Coney Tro, Gallington, French Weir, Victoria Park. Now, they are absolutely essential to supporting the council's vision to maintain attractive, open and welcoming spaces. So with the acquisition of the parks from the 1st of April 2023, the town council became responsible for these Friends of groups. And it's important for us to establish a policy that not only encourages the formation of new Friends of groups, but also outlines the governance necessary for creating a constitution. So the policy proposal was initially brought forward by the Finance and Governance Committee on the 11th of March, but was deferred. Subsequently, a meeting was arranged with the Friends of groups and other interested parties, which took place a few weeks ago now, to discuss and refine the policy, ensuring that it is supportive and motivational for the inception of new groups, more clearly defining the roles and activities to be shared between the town council and the Friends of groups. So the policy aligns to the town council's volunteer policy, which we will recognise the contributions and good things that volunteers make across our community, building community spirit, enhancing our public spaces and promoting sustainable practices. And with regards to implications on the corporate plan, so there are 2 corporate priorities this policy supports. One of them is an engaged community and a sustainable environment. The community engagement groups facilitate interaction through events like litter picking, offering practical ways to help the environment. Additionally, social gatherings such as picnics, events, activities, foster community cohesion and encourage local involvement. So the Friends of groups can also focus on restoring habitats and boosting biodiversity, aiding environmental conservation, promoting environmental awareness, and can help shape community habits. So with regards to climate and ecological implications, similar to what I've just said, the Friends of Group will support a key role in helping the council deliver its emerging ambitions and increasing biodiversity of its green spaces, helping the town to reach its net zero target. With regards to financial and resource implications for adopting the policy, there are none. And I've just put down a risk table here. So just to highlight some of the risks here and some of the mitigation measures that we've put in place. So volunteers could have having a detrimental impact on the park or the environmental impact if they're not doing things quite correctly. So to mitigate that, we will ensure that the volunteers have a good understanding of the council's ambitions with its parks and open spaces. Another risk is accidents, injuries with volunteers, and we would ensure that they have public liability insurance in place to support their volunteers. And another risk, conflicts between the council and the Friends of groups, that we will ensure to have regular engagement, and we'll carry out those engagement sessions to have any key projects that the Friends of group would wish to carry out. Thanks, Chair.
Any questions?
Thank you, Craig. We had a very good meeting, didn't we? The beginning of August with representatives from the Rainy Friends Group. It was really, really positive. And so I'm just, but by the looks of it, having a little quick read through, as I did earlier, it looks like some of their issues are taken on board because they had some specific requests, concerns, and things they wanted in there. So have they seen this latest revised version, or is it the case that they have sent in, you've taken specific things from their representations and imported it and amended the document?
Yeah, so I know from the meeting we had copies of the policy that they had scribbled their notes on. Yeah. So I've taken copies from the Friends, the Victoria Park Action Group, and the Comey Trope chair and treasurer, and taken their comments, reflected it within the policy, and that is what's being presented today.
And I think at the meeting, I can't remember what we concluded on this, but I seem to remember us saying that it would be a good idea to have some sort of how-to guide for, like, so for example, I need to set up for Goodland Gardens. It wouldn't be entirely unhelpful to have a sort of Taunton sort of focused. I mean, these things probably exist, and I was trying to Google earlier, and I could not. It's finding it quite hard to manage to remember, but I'm sure they exist. It's just if anyone knew, there's lots of different plots. I know a couple of different people around Taunton who are thinking of setting up friends groups. And yes, they can read the policy, so they can deduce from that. We have to have a treasurer, we have to have a bank account, we have to have this information, this is the role of it. But it's not that sort of practical, down to earth, you know, getting a bank account for an evolution organisation, for example, isn't it? So the very practical things that it would be good if we could signpost, either signpost people to a really good guide that is entirely applicable to here and would make sense for here, or that we quickly generate our own. I think that would be a really good step forward.
Just, does this come back for review again this time next year? Or the two?
They have to refer to the plan, so.
No, it doesn't matter, it doesn't. I'm just thinking as this beds in, you might think to review again.
Is there a regular update on this?
Yeah, I know when we get feedback from our community with regards to the policies or how we act out on things, we would kind of want to reflect the needs of our community. We would have conversations with the relevant committee, amend the policy, and then bring it back for approval.
It would usually be either year or 2 years, so we can decide that through. But yeah, they're always working documents to be amended.
Right then, we've been asked for members to consider the approval of the Friends policy. May I have a proposer, please? And seconder, no show of hands. Unanimous. Fantastic. So that's carried. Moving on to item number 6, the grant policy amendment. Members to consider the approval of the amended grant policy.
So this is come about from obviously we've been running for over a year now with the grants committee, so there's been some reflection on how we've administered grants in the process, taking feedback from people who's applied for them. So work has been done with the grants committee to look at any amendments within the policy to make it clearer and ensure a transparent and fair process. So there's been some amendments made to the policy which are to be reviewed for your consideration today.
Any questions?
Yeah, there was one thing that struck me when I was reading it earlier, which I think has been in there since the beginning. I think it was 2.1 something, and made a note of it. It's about established and constituted organisations must submit independently verified or audited accounts. Now, when the organisation I'm involved with, when they apply for a grant, they're just declining voluntary organisations, and they're constituted, but they're not a charity. They've got a constitution management committee, so they're a voluntary association. There's no way of putting up their accounts independently verified or audited. They're just, it's like a spreadsheet, you know, income, expenditure. You can get management accounts, whatever. So I just want that just made me stop and think, what does that mean? Do you mean like charities, or do you mean, because we haven't been checking all of their accounts independently? I'm just querying that.
It's part of the checking process when grant applications come in, they are checked. If it was an organisation that didn't have any, then obviously that could be a discussion that they could have to look to see what could be put in place instead of.
Well, that's been, that's not new thing, is it? That's been,
That's always been there.
beginning. Yeah, just like, I don't think that one was been a. This must submit, or you don't have any, you don't have an auditor, you don't have any, it's just what your treasurer tells you, so, I don't know, it's just like, I don't like reading things and I'm like, I don't understand that because that hasn't been, you see what I mean?
Yeah, I thought it was actually part of the checklist, so the grants officer, so they're not present, the grants officer would check checklist of everything that comes in and what they need to submit.
No, just Karen, just, I think she's got a follow.
I was just gonna, it was just that same thing,
Okay.
it was just really was just gonna say, even a small parish council, like Bishop's Hall, and if anybody makes the grant application, you have to supply account, audited accounts, or income expenditure, so it would have been part of this process. Yeah, I mean, you send in your account, it's not like it says, the policy says, it's stupid on impact. Is it 3.4? Independently verified accounts. So I know that organisations submit their accounts, so you do your accounts, and they've even, I think, copies of bank statements and stuff to verify that. But that doesn't seem to be the same thing as what that wording suggests, or am I going? Which number was it? Sorry. I was making notes earlier about this. It may have tweaked. I've got it written down here 2.1.1. That one. I have to go back in and check. No, I don't think we don't want to go. Somewhere in there, just I copied it out. Yes, it's down 3.2, so 3.2.2, content of general grant applications. Established and constituted organisation must submit independently verified or audited accounts.
So if you're not constituted, you don't need to.
Yeah, the three, you have to be constituted because you have, otherwise you couldn't apply. You have to have a management committee, you have to have all of the governance.
Can I just answer that? It doesn't have to be audited, but it should be verified by somebody that has financial brain of some sort.
So that might that just mean the officer, our officer looks at it and thinks, oh, well, that's typical for a small voluntary organisation, so that if they thought, was a bit dodgy or something, they would ask further questions.
Well, if I was looking at it, I'd ask for more bank statements so that I could verify the income and expenditure. It was as simple as an income and expenditure. So, and that's your independent verification. Whereas if it's slightly larger, you would expect it is what they produce proper accounts, so you would expect to see them.
It's saying that you have to submit independently verified, whereas what you're saying is, actually, we would do a spot on verification if it's a small organisation and they don't enjoy accounting. Why would they? They don't need to.
It can't be efficient change the most, it should.
And 3.21 says newly established organisations must provide basic financial information that satisfies the town council's requirements.
But you might have an organisation that's been going for a long, long time and doesn't have independently verified auditors. Accounts for my body. I don't like stuff that doesn't, that I'll have on it, but that doesn't work, right? I know what you mean. But it depends on the size of organisation. Some checks in a small organisation might be going for ages that work literally on a shoestring, which a whole lot of organisations do. You know, we would do the checking, we wouldn't expect them to go.
Change it to
You know, to be really challenged.
Yep.
Just a question really around 2.4.3, because I remember, the community said that it said applicants formally said must attend the grants committee, so I went along once. Has that been changed because people were struggling to attend, or because the meetings have become cumbersome with so many people coming? I just wondered what drove that change, whether it was the town council or the applicants. And I suppose what we're saying there is you should attend, and if you don't attend and we can't answer the questions, that might put your grant in jeopardy. And I think I've got no real issue with the change, but it's just what drove that change, because I know the meetings went on a long time with lots of people in the room because we put must. Whereas what I think what you're saying is if the actual application form fulfills everything and gives us all the information, we shouldn't need you there.
That's basically what the chair and the rest of it's the ones that are on the peripheries that then proposing the minutes, the questions of minutes.
it was definitely a bit of both.
Yeah. You had your hand up before and I could go.
Okay, under 2.4.2, it says about how it needs to be done through the online form. Is it possible for an organisation to get the form printed out, fill it in by pen, and then sort of submit it by hand, or would they need to like scan in?
Yeah, it says the paper version can be provided upon request.
I'm happy with the policy that's been redrafted. I just put a marker down that we'll have to revisit it again. Reason one is that the venue grant thing, I think that needs to be, we need to have the ability to make a sort of rolling programme, a bit like the youth grants. Because say, for example, Taunton Group out are in the seat of the venue grant this year. You're making people can't plan ahead sufficiently. Certain organisations, if there may be a rationale for at least having the power to have on, 3-year things for venues. I think that we will need to consider. And the other thing is the fact that we said in the arts and culture strategy that we would have cultural development grants. So that pot is sat there. That needs to be considered. How does that fit in with the grants programme? How is that? So it's just to sort of flag up. I was wondering about the small grants. I don't know how many clients they've brought from. But again, I think because it's a big area, it's a really important part of our work, because it is creating community action. It's really, really helping people out there who know what they're doing fantastic work. And it's incredibly powerful stuff that we're funding, and it's huge benefits, but I think because of, because of that, and because we're new still, we may yet have to amend it again. I do worry about if the 100 quid thing for small grants, what if somebody wanted 150 quid or 200 quid or 250, would they, I don't know if that's maybe a bit low, but I don't know, we'll see. Let's see how we can make use of that.
Sorry, can
I was just going to, just go, so in relation to having it reviewed, it wasn't meant to be reviewed until May 25, but obviously because of operational, it was, it's being addressed, that it's not working, it needs to be clearer, we can bring it back, so, it can be done at any time.
just going back to the point about should and not must. I think it should be must, because when an organisation is applying for a grant, it's the final stage. It's like when you apply for a job. If you send a CV but don't send a covering letter, you're not taken seriously, you're automatically removed from the process. So I think as we're giving away money to, yes, good causes, we should be seeing everybody that we can, regardless if the meeting goes on longer than normal. So at the end of the day, they're presenting it. Yeah, an application could read really well, but not necessarily. You then have to have confidence in the people that are actually delivering it. You can only do that really by seeing them face to face. That's just my observation. I think we should see anyone who applies should be going to the meeting.
Meeting decided about those. But if somebody couldn't come and they were very confident in the application, and that's why we really sort of make that stop.
I mean, lastly, I think it was probably what I last week was Rob was chairing and I, but the last couple of times before that, we stopped getting them in to present, because that was the thing, takes like 3 to 5 minutes, whatever. We know we should know this, we've got the information. And then we were asking questions. What we had started to do is they were in the room, so if we wanted to ask them questions, we could. So, but again, the should bit is that, if somebody got a very decent application and nobody has any questions, then it might not matter if they're there. If it would be recommended sort of what's been there, it wouldn't, as you said, it wouldn't be necessarily game changer. Whereas on an existing policy, somebody might have a fantastic project, very well established, everyone, lots of confidence in them, wrote an absolutely stomping report, so they can't get somebody there all the night. So it's that flexibility.
And then just on question, on point 3, just in terms of them giving the results and things, which I like, that's been amended. It was just a quick question out of curiosity, really. If they're unable to provide this and then don't return the funds, will we then pursue them through legal means?
Have the ability to. It would be down to the committee to go back to the committee.
So the committee would need to make a proposal
The
to.
committee would need to be informed if they haven't fulfilled their requirements and make a decision.
So should it state failure to comply with this could result in legal action? Just to make sure the point is you have to do it.
What we don't want to do, this is supposed to be a kind of friendly project policy. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's clear that you have to do an end of run report, you have to provide the financials, and if you don't, well, at least there's no point coming in and going to the wrong again. But does it say we will seek to recover? It does. It says we will seek to recover any money that hasn't been spent on what you said you would spend on. So I think if we know that ultimately we do have that power, but maybe in the sort of publicity around it, we don't say, if you fail to apply, just because the feel of it needs to be open and engaging and enabling, doesn't it?
This one?
No, it's just before Caroline said that, I think review should and may do, and I think we could put something, maybe say we may or we may seek to do this. You know, it doesn't mean we're going to, you know, use that sort of, we can, we keep the money, we set that already, and I think we're covered, but.
Yeah, we've already said it.
Let's move on then. So let's move to the vote. So the members were asked to consider
Sorry, Chair, are we made around the must and the should, you raise that, are we changing that or are we keeping it as should?
I guess the general feeling is to leave that on us. So if there are no other questions, let's move to the vote. So members are asked to consider the approval of the amended grant policy. Second, show of hands. It's unanimous, and that has carried. Number 7, members to consider the approval of the amended sponsorship policy.
It's the same again. So obviously, we've been through the process, learned from that. That's the changes that's been considered with the grant committee and the chair.
So, any questions? No, right, let's move on then. May I have a proposer? Seconder? Okay, show of hands. Unanimous, and that's carried. Petitions policy. Members to consider the approval of the petitions policy. There
So, there's a draft petition policy. I've looked over different councils' petition policy from that goes all the way to Somerset, so varying level of sort of population sizes. So when creating this, taking into account sort of similarities and differences, and the main similarity is the threshold for petition to be discussed. The maximum leading is 5% of our local population. So for this, I proposed a 50 threshold for a petition to be recognised by the council, and 1,000 for its actually taken into account for discussion. Whether a petition recognised as being recognised by the clerk, mayor, deputy mayor, leader, deputy leader, and any area ward councillors as well. Just because of the 1,000 threshold, it doesn't mean any petitions below that will be discussed. If the sort of agreement you said to recognising petitions, if it's a local issue, then it will come to VT or the council and be discussed. If there are any other questions on the policy.
My initial feeling is 1,000 is a bit high.
Yeah.
If you're going for 50 to be recognised, I think maybe 500 should be to be discussed, but that's just my initial.
I had that same comment before when we discussed the policy, and in the scheme of things, the population would be 66,000. Is 1,000 really low population? So big. When we looked at other councils, say I think Weymouth, for example, they had 1,000. Their population was a third of what it says, and the requirement is 5%. So the justification around it.
I'm just thinking about my own that has about 1,000 houses. Now it'd have to be everyone from the area. Because I imagine for petitions, it's not necessarily going to be something that comes to the whole of Taunton. It's like probably going to be some very local issues that are raised.
Well, I think what the other thing we're trying to stop here is vectors, people doing it again and again and getting us to discuss. My feeling is, I know the kind of mixture of the council and its makeup will change, but I think we're covered. So if we got a petition of 600 and we as councillors, I don't think we'd be averse to discussing it. I think that's the way I think about it. You know, but don't know, it's very difficult to judge, but my feeling is we've got enough text there to say, if you don't make the 1,000, but we think it's justifiable discussion, it allows us to do it. You know. Whereas the other way, we make it too low and somebody gets, I don't know how easy that would be, that sounds quite difficult to get 600, 500, and then they can keep using those same 500 people to get a discussion. And we've got no recourse if that happens to say,
No, we do that to 1,000. That's what you're saying. I think, for me, I just think in reality, getting 1,000 signatures for a town council issue, unless it is so big that everyone wants to make a song and dance about it, it's nigh on impossible. So giving a target of 500, for instance, probably a little bit more easier and a bit more open and transparent, giving the public control to trigger a petition discussion. 1,000 kind of takes it beyond, I believe. That's just me. If you're saying 50 is enough to get recognised, surely the next stage would be 500 to trigger a petition. That's just my opinion. But, because ultimately, then if it's 1,000 and say, like Paul says, somebody gets 600, for instance, say that could be in 10 years' time, that could be a different makeup of council or different councillors, and they could say, no, it was 1,000. But our intention was, we could have gone, yeah, we as a council can make that decision to discuss that, but that falls on the councillors to make that decision, whereas if it's triggered by the public, it's automatically triggered. So I'm just trying to make it a bit more open and transparent. That's my opinion. Carolyn?
I think I tend to agree with you. I know why you picked 1,000 thing, but just thinking back to Somerset West and Taunton, I seem to remember we had a petition that we debated in full council. I think it only got 250 signatures. It was a really important petition. But it was a child, a kid, who'd done it, and he was asking for skate ramps in Yarrington, and I'm fairly sure I only did it. But it would, you know, I was just trying to Google, I can't remember what the official SWT policy was, but it makes me just feel that maybe there could be really important issues that matter, whether they matter across Taunton or to, you know, specific wards, or it doesn't really matter. Maybe we should set it a bit lower and then review after if we get any in. I don't know. It does seem a bit high, 1,000 to me.
Another thing to think about is, can we protect ourselves by saying what the petition is about, or can they just slightly amend it and it becomes a new subject matter? I was just wondering if there's a way around it to say you can't resubmit the same petition with 500 people about the same subject matter. Do you see what I mean, Chair?
Yeah.
That would stop the vex. Somebody going, and now I want another, you know.
I would agree with that point.
I'm come round to Caroline, you know, if 500, you know, let's be honest, it doesn't happen every day, does it?
It's hard work getting petitions.
Yeah, so on that point, if a petition is received that's already been discussed or submitted 2 years prior, then it's a similar topic, it wouldn't be go forward and discuss.
And we would also do an internal check to allay Paul's fear if someone could then go, got 500 signatures from one issue and I've automatically transferred them onto to another issue. We would double check that to make sure that there was no.
Yeah, so we would be checking the petition regularly as well, and with online petitions, there have to be sort of email protections and addresses as well, and sure they're actually important.
Yeah, just going back on that subject, we've got 4.4, saying that, you know, the clerk and their leader can all give their discretion when they do see these petitions come through to say, okay, is this an actual, you know, is this a petitioning something, or is this a vexatious or complicated type of thing? So I think, you know, we've got something in there to say we can make that human decision to decide whether this is appropriate for the council to look at again, or whether, you know, they've had their chance and there's to try something else.
Yeah, you had your hand up a while ago, and then it came down. I didn't know if you want to say.
I think it was just to confirm what Paul was saying, that, you know, even though we've got this figure of 1,000, anything less than that comes in, as we say, can always be, if it's not, we're not stopping people who've got a large number, say 500, whatever, we can still consider it. So I was just basically going to say what Paul said. I mean, I've got no issue with that. I think it's just because they, you know, it's like the fail safe's already in there to say that, you know, we will review it. Anything that comes, any petition that comes through, we always review it.
Problem is, that's fine, because we're all cuddly. We're all lonely, you know, cuddly people, community-minded people, you know, but the thing about having a policy is, what if you know, what if we all went under a bus and we had an election? Elected, half-hearted, whatever, so we're like, it doesn't meet the criteria, so, well, then we've got discretion, then we're not going to take your petition. That's the only bit, relies on discretion. Maybe too much, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, go into battle. So,
I think just for me, just to reiterate my point, I think it gives the public more power in that sense. So they feel engaged, and it's a much easier target to achieve, and without being wishy-washy with you know, in 20 years' time, a leader saying, "No, there's only 600 signatures, I need another 400. I don't fancy discussing that." So that's my only thing. If someone gets 500 signatures, I think that's quite, for a town council area, parish council area, I think that's a pressing issue. So I just think 500 would be a reasonable number. That's just me. Ed?
Yeah, I think in terms of, you know, if there's a different council in the future that determine, you know, has an attitude of that, that's obviously up to the electorate based on who they elect. I agree having a smaller number for a to go to full council would be a good idea. So I would agree to 500 as well.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not, like Karen says, I'm not, you know, behind the ditch over this, but hear what Ben's saying, and I've said my bit, but it sounds like there's no reason why we can't change it to 500. I think. I mean, the other thing to ask is, can we review our petitions policy? If someone keeps, you know, is that an option? We can extend it. There's no way of reflection of what you're thinking going forward.
So are we happy to change to 500? That's the only amendment to that. I believe any other further questions? No. So just to recap, the members to consider the approval of the petitions policy. Can I have the and seconder? Oh, lovely. Shows unanimous. That's carried. Annual investment strategy. Members to consider the approval of the annual investment strategy.
Being updated, there are only a couple of minor changes. The main one is when we define high quality investments, which are defined in statutory guidance, and also in the description of our current investments. So this will ensure that any investments we have are only high quality investments, to ensure that we have our investments in public funds. Into your efforts to consider and agree on.
Any questions?
Oh, it's got one.
I was thinking.
I read this earlier, it's probably me because I don't understand who it is, but it says that under 3.1 that the town clerk, in consultation with the chair of the council, will determine the period investments can be prudently committed and shall risk assess fixed term investments. Now, is the chair the mayor? All due respect to our mayor currently, previously, but maybe not future, is the mayor the best person to qualify about how long the period investment should be.
Perhaps it should be the chair of finance.
You don't actually have any fixed targets.
Oh, okay. So, or the lead leader or.
The chair of, yeah, chair of finance.
Comment if I may, just for the benefit of any our eager viewers, listeners, that the council is kind of getting some money back. We put the money, we move money that we get into a higher yield account. We kind of shift things back, so it's very safe, and look after your money very safely, but we also make your money work for you. That's worth saying.
Exactly.
Within the document, it says about trying to keep at least £1,000 within our accounts. If there's a certain, job within the investment where something goes over £1,000, do we have a sort of automatic procedure to pull the money out? Or to make changes to make sure that we don't suddenly lose it all?
There's sufficient money in our deposit account at NatWest to cover probably 6 weeks worth of investment expenditure. But on a daily basis, so we'll spend out of the current account. What that's saying is the money automatically transfers overnight to restock the balance in the current account of £1,000. So we spend it out of there, we don't have to keep transferring in between the deposit accounts. But there's an auto transfer.
Okay.
To put that account £1,000 in.
Okay.
So members were to consider the approval of the annual investment strategy. May I have a proposer? Seconder? Ed? Show of hands. Unanimous, and that is carried. Number 10, members to consider the approval of the mayor and members' expenses policy. And again?
As members' expenses policy has been reviewed and updated, taking into account the fact that the council now pays allowances to members. So this limits the expenses that are claimable by members as the allowances. It's the market on mining.
Any questions? Caroline?
Return to a theme that I have warned to previously, which is the whole, this is around compliance with the Equality Act and reasonable adjustment. So where it says the town council do not pay travelling expenses for members working within the parish, I don't think that will fly disability discrimination wise, because say you're a disabled person, the only way that you can get to a meeting, say because of mobility barriers, is through a taxi. Are we really saying, well, you get an allowance and you can pay for it out of that? Because that would not apply to a non-disabled person who doesn't face the same barriers. So there's an inequality there. I've raised this before. I think that reasonable adjustment, we have a duty as a town council to make reasonable adjustments, whether it's to our staff, whether it's to the elected members, whether it's to the members of the public engaging with us. So I think we need to think very carefully about being fully understanding and compliant around that and understanding how that should work in practice. Because alarm bells are ringing in my head. I used to work at the Disability Rights Commission before it got merged and spurged. So that was my bread and butter, reasonable adjustments and stuff. So that worries me. I mean, maybe that there's something else in there that I couldn't find anything else that would sort of override that. But you could have somebody in that position. You need basically the Equality Act is to create greater equity. That doesn't mean saying you treat everybody the same. You have to treat certain people differently, and all of that they can enjoy equality and opportunity, and that disabled people will face barriers that other members don't. That won't always mean additional expenditure, but that was just an example. Taxi to a meeting thing. What point was this? Sorry, 3.1. You could just say, unless for a disability related reason or something like that. shall use when essential.
And we have been.
When you say working within the parish, do you mean outside of meetings? Where does it, I'm now confused as to,
Just policy to reimburse members for expenses incurred in performing the duties such as travelling to TCC business and attending training. Which is part of 3.1.
outside of the,
So that already happens.
it is the policy to reimburse. Provided, on the one hand you said we don't, and then the other hand that's contradicting.
Maybe it just means,
Special wording.
maybe it just means that paragraph about taxes shall be used when essential, maybe move that up a bit so it comes and just further up.
So it forms part of 3.1.
Yeah. So it reads as part 3.1, if that makes sense.
I don't disagree, Caroline, and I'm going to fight you. But is disability and the Latin being paid? It's not the same thing, is it? It's just, if you're disabled, it doesn't mean you're necessarily poor and you can't afford to get a taxi. If I haven't got a car, I'm not disabled, but I still.
No, but I don't have a car, I don't go, I have no mobility in hand, I get wherever. I'll just,
Yeah, I just.
I'll just walk there. If somebody else doesn't have that, mine have that option. And it's, yeah, the mobility impact is it's a matter.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking from putting a policy hat on and putting this through a policy lens. It raises certain issues for me, and I'd rather be all really clear about what our duties are under the Policy Act, make sure that we reflect that in this kind of policy. I just think it's much safer, much better, much clearer, and yeah.
So yeah, I think in some cases, people with impairments or disabilities, they do have extra costs on top of what a normal person would get for an ordinary person would have. So that has to be taken into consideration, but, you know, it says in 3.8 that taxes can be used and they can use bookings. You know, if they're required, they can book through the office, so maybe that 3.8 move it up a bit. Unless you want something specifically, Carol, in there that relates to.
So you could just say this, do not pay for the expenses. I mean, I think I would tweak it, I would play around with the wording, could we delegate someone to go and just finalise the wording? It needs to be really clear. It's not just in relation to travel either. So say I'm elected, say I'm a deaf BSL user, say BSL is my native language. I would be expecting town council to provide interpreters, meeting would not be expected to go and range that out of my allowance. I would expect, you know, that to be so, and the transport, if you cannot, there's no other way for you reasonably to get there, because of a reason related to disability, I would expect again town council, which we have been doing anyway. I don't think it needs to be really clear in the policy. So if somebody reading that on face value, that's discriminatory. And trying to work out how all the different points fit together is just too confusing. My brain. Doesn't reflect actually our practice now. We are making effectively, we are making reasonable adjustments. I think it's helpful to think of them as reasonable adjustments. It's not just a so-and-so needs an expensive, no, it's a reasonable adjustment.
That's the wording that we need then, is reasonable adjustment.
Yeah, reasonable adjustments.
Do you have separate policies on disability and sustainability workplace reasonable adjustments? Check. Yeah, because then we could slot something in that refers to that policy in that, say, in accordance with the policy. So again, it's a wording thing.
So we could pass it tonight and delegate to you to go and tweaking.
So, I guess then let's move to vote. Less any other questions? Okay, so, members to consider the approval of the mayor and member expenses policy. May I have a proposer? Paul, seconder, Bev, show of hands. Unanimous. Carried. Financial report. Members to consider the reports presented and note the current position.
There's a budget up to the end of August, together with the resumes. To show the current position of, there's no major overspending to date. We're going through a process of overhauling the budget at the moment, putting out the salaries on a service line so that we can show the wider committee on this, so that the operations and assets team will have all of their staff costs in there, in communities in place, all their staff costs, and all the rest will go down into 2020, which is central services. So we're going through that process. We're also going through a process of putting out the capital expenditure and the revenue expenditure, so that's clear where we are with that. But there are no major overspends at the moment. The violence report, in line with financial regulations, we have to report any violence over 30,000. 30,000, yeah. And there's been two major violence, one for staff costs, due to the revised staff structure and the job evaluations, and the other was 120,000 from service growth and improvements to the revenue grants. That's the major changes in the budget. There's attached is a copy of the payments for this year to date. And again, in line with financial regulations. Committee has to consider the reports and to note the current position and ask any questions about it.
I've got a question about cash flow transactions. So there's a number of transactions where there's the payment reference and the pay name are both blacked out, and they're not like, I'm not concerned about the payment ones, which are clearly, but it's the £3,000, you know, £4,100, so I'm like, some of them are payment references and some of them nothing payment reference wise. And so I was just like, surely we must. Somebody needs to explain what that is, because there's quite a lot of them.
Yes, they are the payments that have been made for the local RFO and the finance officer, stroke grants officer for the year to date. So they contain personal information, and that's why they've been redacted.
So they were staff.
Well, they're not staff members, technically they're consultants.
Can't we have a thing saying this is for contractors, so anyone reading this, it'll be nice and transparent, you know, otherwise somebody would be like, oh, well, what was it? No, it wasn't, because I sent her an email, I sent Gail an email earlier. So I know that there's somebody else reading these documents, is not going to know, there's a reason why we're not naming it, it's contractor, you know, contractor, so is there any way of getting, I don't know, it so that it's clear that it's gone on something legitimate, rather than
know what you mean, because I thought the same.
Not in the cash company, because that will have the same detail that goes on the bank statement, so that will have the person.
Just a minute, you could make a suggestion of when it's go off onto the website that there's a covered statement to say that any item that is redacted is because it contains personal information.
Small ones, stand expensive.
But I mean, the big one, the whatever three, I would want, if I was a very engaged resident, I'd be like, what are they doing spending? And they say, oh, it's confidential. Ooh. You know, I'm just saying it's for contractor costs. It's for this, so at least we know the nature of it.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to.
I think that proposal's put an asterisk somewhere here, so if people should say redacted items are for contractors and staff, you know.
that's clear, that nobody has to, oh my God, what we're doing, asterisk, to put the footnote. Okay.
Yeah, no, I can do that in the PM.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I wasn't going to ask this, but you mentioned there's no, I can't remember if you said serious or major overspends, but what, without wishing to be pedantic, is there a level where you tell the committee there is a major overspend? Or is that just you saying there's no major overspend?
Off the top of my
It doesn't matter if you don't know, as long as there's a,
5%.
as long as there's a definition, you can't just check me that it's not just
No,
your feeling there's nothing.
no, 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 it's
Yeah.
15. I think it's 15% of the finance, but
And with the, does this come, forgive me, I wasn't at the last meeting, but we've extended this to over 2 months now, is that right? So do we get to look at this every meeting?
Yeah.
And are we the only ones? When's the full council look at this? They don't.
This is, well, the full council agree
The
the
budget.
annual return, the end of year. But no, these statements, I think our actual financial revenues are quarterly, but yet we get them
Yeah.
every,
you'll get them
every other month.
So, sorry, Ian.
Well, I was just going to query about the earmark reserves and silver money. Isn't it? It's right, so it's in reserve silver money for 2024, and at the moment it's 344,000.
Yeah.
3.99. What's happening with that silver money? Is it earmarked for a specific purpose? Is it sitting there waiting to be?
It's sitting in there waiting to be spent. It's not currently earmarked. However, we have discussed that we perhaps need to look at a SIL policy.
It's still silver money really should be sitting in a position.
Yeah, I just say something that with still money, really, we should be using it, but there are clear boundaries of.
Absolutely, yes, there are.
Definitions of what it means.
That's it.
And we should be using it if we're spending any money to do any of those infrastructure projects. And if we've got money that we would have used instead of that, then we should be putting that into any cost reserve, because there's no conditions around those earmarks that, yeah, whereas that's restricted to very specific things that we can spend.
It is. I think something came through the community place about the night, which could possibly qualify under this. So, yeah, so I did mention it to Mom, so asking that possibly could use SIL funds. Because it just worries me, because obviously, you know, SIL funds to most district and parish and towns, it is. But again, we've still got the playgrounds inspections coming up, so it may be that some of that could go to updating playgrounds, so, but no, thank you. Thank you.
So governance wise, given that there are specific ones on what we can and can't spend still, what is the process where so we've noted that there's this rather substantial amount of money that's bad still that we have now, it is in a bank account. So you can't just say, oh, we pull that out of this budget, but surely there has to be a process whereby, I don't know whether it be this committee or another, or some combination of full council, where we decide what are, in relation to our, you know, what you can spend still on, what we intend spending that on. Or what things could potentially be spent on, and setting up a process where if, you know, I mean, you know, bridges, springtime, but I'm sure there'll be multiple other potential, you know, calls on it. So how does that get decided? Given that still is a very specific thing and there's rates attached to it, so you can't just sort of say, oh, we just decided to spend the SIL money, you couldn't show that you'd properly considered the rates.
So the SIL money is obviously in an earmark reserve. Anything that gets spent out of the earmark reserve in line with our financial regulations have to go via full council. So a committee can't spend from an earmark reserve. It would have to be a full council decision.
So here's my question. SIL money is awarded to the area, to a specific area of the town council area. But so for instance, if they're state road development, there'll be SIL money attached to that phase 3 of Narrows, there'll be still money attached to that. Do we have a policy at the moment to say how that money is spent? Because what my concern is, seal money is obviously given based on that local area's need and the impact of the housing development is going to have. And suddenly if that becomes an open plot, then those areas get forgotten and then the money gets dished out as well. So, and they lose everything that was, you know, the money that was given to their area. Yes.
Yes, it is set aside for that. There is only 5 years to spend that money, and it is on 60 years. So if for example, we didn't have anything in that area to spend the money on within 5 years, then we would be better spending it elsewhere in Taunton and setting aside a separate pot that has no conditions on it to spend in that area. Otherwise, after 5 years, we'd have to pay our money back if we haven't spent. That would go back to Somerset County. I can see what you're saying, it should be spent in the area that the development, the impact of the development's on, but it's not always as easy to do that because there's not always things in that area that we can spend that money on in line with the regulations.
But there may be something that the councils of those specific areas could come forward and say, there's 500 grand in the pot for this particular area, we need this, this, this and this. There's a shopping list, can we do this? And you go yes or no.
No,
Actually.
let's try.
I won't make a point on, so, but obviously, you know, some of that in the earmark reserve probably relates to Orchard Grove, Cambridge development, and obviously what a lot of developers do now is they don't put any extra money into the pot to develop playgrounds, to develop play equipment. They say, well, that's what you get the money for. So it's yes, it's a bit similar to what you were saying, that, you know, some of that money should go back into those areas where the still money came from. I mean, it's subject for different group, different conversation, but obviously I think it's something we need to look at.
Can we get a policy brought forward?
I've a list, so awesome.
Just one general question about the budget lines, as Caroline mentioned briefly around the cultural developments. Is it the remit of this committee to look at this and to highlight where, obviously we look to go and make sure we're not overspending, but is it the remit of this committee to say we've not spent any on this line, we've not spent any on this line? Because Chair might disagree, others might disagree, but our job as a council is not to save money, it's to spend it wisely as we can. So I just wondered, looking at that, is it who else, is it the behest of the other members to across the whole council to go, well, hang on, we haven't spent any money in this pot yet? You see what I mean? Chair?
So the reason why we're dividing the budget up into service areas is so it can, therefore we can add a budget section to each committee. So each committee has a overview of what they've got within their budget pots. It will also ensure that the service manager who is responsible for that area has a clear indication of what they've got left. So it will eventually, once it's split up, go to the committees and be a standing item on your agendas. But overall, this committee has the ability to say, right, communities in place, they've still got money, but the owners will go back to the committee to have the control over their budgets.
As a
And
committee,
they've got one.
yeah, as a committee, do we not tend to have, we're more the overseers, do we have our own budget?
Finance committee doesn't really
No,
carry out a lot of
no, okay.
But you just know, yes, in a bit, I think, yeah.
Yes, the overseer, okay, fine, thank you.
But we also don't have to spend money. Just
We don't share.
So that's also that. Any other questions? No? All right then. So members to consider the report presented and note the current position. Have a proposer? Caroline, and second Ed. Show of hands. Unanimous and agreed. Well, Members to consider the revised financial regulations and recommend adoption to full council. Okay.
The financial regulations before rewrite by now Association of Local Councils. And I've been through and reviewed all of our existing financial regs against the new ones. It wasn't a matter of just, I started off by moving things around to match. So, putting it out one over and putting it into the other of the document. It turned out to be.
Did you get fair enough?
Where did that bit come from? What was that? Well, so in the end, I decided then after that, I'll go down this document and say, that's this, where is it in this document? And that's exactly what I've done. So that's where you can see where the changes are. So essentially, it's become streamlined, but you can see where we're picked up in the regulations in the new ones where we have the old ones, and also the new ones that I've now got slight amendments for things that we already captured in our old financial regulations that were specific to the so that's sort of the background to the document. It also follows the standing orders now, in which some of the items are involved, which means that they're mandatory. So there are items in the standing orders that are eventually those are financial regulations as well. But overall, it is a review based on the full view of it. Essentially,
Great. Any questions? Second.
Just go. It was a huge.
So members to consider the revised financial regulations and recommend adoption to council. May I have a proposer? Ed, seconder, all show of hands. As far as unanimous. That is carried. Item number 13, internal audit updates. Committed to note completion of outstanding internal audit recommendations. Okay.
that's exactly what's showing all the items that were raised last year at the end of the year by the internal auditor. There's a table showing how those have been completed, so there's no outstanding internal recommendations from last year. Risks.
Any questions for Gail on this item?
Sorry, Gail, the amber ones, the significance of those, there's not a significance to the colours from green to amber.
I think there is an idea of the risk that have been.
Oh, sorry, they're risks, they're not completions. Right, okay, sorry, I thought they were stated. How we go.
Any further questions? So there's a no. So we're going to be committed to know the completion of the outstanding internal audit recommendations. May I have a proposer? Caroline, and a seconder, Ed. Show of hands, please. Is carried unanimously. Number 14, draft standing orders. Members to consider the revised standing orders and recommend adoption to full council.
So I can go for this one. So this again is it was brought in line with the new financial regulations. So to ensure that the policies coincide with each other.
So no. So members are asked to consider the revised standing orders and recommend adoption to full council. May I have a proposer? Caroline, and a seconder. Show of hands. Will you vote? Wasn't too sure it was. Number 15, draft scheme of delegation. Members to consider the revised scheme of delegation and recommend adoption to full council.
Yeah, so this one has been done, so we also reviewed them in May. The council obviously has agreed to give a area of delegation for spend. So there's planning committees, the new scheme of delegation reflects that. It also reflects the service manager's responsibility to have some delegated powers within their budget control, because as it was, everything was coming back to me to authorise, whereas it should be the service manager, so they have a responsibility for their own areas.
Any questions? Bev?
Yeah, I think this is great. I think I always, as the chair of the community in place, I always sort of struggled a bit with this £100,000 delegated authority budget. And I just thought that wasn't going to work. So I, for one, will really, when this is all, you feel about all these things to drain you, but if, sit down and have a chance to say, right, this is going to work. Firstly, for me as chair and also something to be properly. So yes, I look at this.
Any further questions? No, so members to consider the revised scheme of delegation and recommend adoption to full council. May I have a proposer, please? Caroline, and a seconder, Bev. Show of hands. And I'm also done. Good voting poll. Nice and clear. So that looks to conclude the meeting and is 19:28. Thank you very much for attending and for watching. Okay.